I never knew how to do light preparation. If I wasn't deep in the work, I felt naked, like I'd walk onto set and the director would suddenly say, "I hate this scene. Make something up." And I had to be ready for that. If I wasn't, I felt utterly exposed. Every day on set I carried Brett's book. Before every scene I'd flip through it again. His descriptions were too good to ignore. Maybe that's why Mary and I clicked instantly. During my first audition at her tiny apartment, just her and a little camera, I didn't show up with childhood backstories or psychological essays like the other actors. I simply said, "None of that matters. He's basically an alien." And when we did the scene, I started laughing. She burst out laughing. We realized we shared the exact same twisted sense of humor. Right then, we knew, this is going to work. She put everything on the line for me. She had studios offering big names, and she still said, "No, I want Christian." Even when financiers refused to fund her unless she replaced me. We even performed scenes live in New York, Willem Dafoe, Chloe Sevigny, the whole crew, until they finally gave us the money. Then our agents forgot to put us in the package deal. We basically secured funding, and got kicked out. But I refused to walk away. Directors came and went. Roles were handed to other actors. Mary called and said, "Christian, they've given it to someone else." And I'd answer, Doesn't matter. We're still making this film." Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. I turned down the few offers I had, bad projects, and kept preparing for a movie I technically wasn't even in. And then, it came back. They called. And it was ours again. A ridiculous, impossible victory. Never doubt your intuition. A director may have their vision, but you always bring something no one else can. I visited the trading floors of Wall Street back when they still existed, studying everyone, from the rookies to the sharks. Some traders slapped me on the back and said, "Patrick Bateman! We love him!" And all I could think was, oh, the irony. They didn't get it. It was satire, an absurd, grotesque mirror of 1980s capitalism. That's what made it hilarious to me. Do you like Phil Collins? Bateman was obsessed with Genesis since Duke, 1980. I won't ruin anyone's fun by claiming I wasn't a diehard fan whose life was changed by those songs. Of course they were life-changing, aren't they for everyone? Music helped build the character. Just like in Amsterdam, David and I drowned ourselves in jazz documentaries for weeks, letting the sound shape everything. I use every kind of music to get myself into the right headspace. Emotion comes through the ears first, something you really notice in the editing room. You can keep the same image, change the music, and suddenly the entire feeling of the scene becomes something else. That's the magic of life, isn't it? Get a damn job, Al. Your negativity is what's holding you back. I still remember someone threatening me on the street when a few people were furious about the film. Early internet days, completely unhinged. A friend even called to warn me. They know you're walking route. They said they'll jump you in that alley and rip the cortex out of your skull. Don't go down that alley. So of course I thought, well, now I have to go see. I walked up and down, waiting. Where are they? Come on. Nothing happened. Batman logic, really, wandering around at night in ridiculous outfits, looking for danger. Just like when people told me, "Don't play Patrick Bateman. Career suicide." And I said, "Keep talking. I absolutely want to do it." Then others said, "If you play Batman, that's it. You'll never be anything else. You'll always be Batman." And I said, "Bring it on. Let's see if that's true." Because if I didn't have the skill to transcend one role, then I didn't deserve the career anyway. I've always known Batman would probably be the role I'm remembered for. Iconic, larger than life. But to me, it wasn't some trap. It was, oh good, now I can pay my rent. That alone was a massive relief. A childhood dream, finally real. I owe Chris Nolan endlessly. We made 4 films together. And thanks to Batman, suddenly it was easier. Directors and financiers who once hesitated, after that trilogy they'd say, "All right. Yes. We'll cast him." Mary fought like hell to get me into American Psycho. After Batman, she didn't have to fight nearly as hard. Bruce Wayne is a wounded child who never recovers from his trauma, His rage creates a monster who obsesses over justice. Then there's Batman the persona, an empty cipher, a riddle in a suit, no one knowing what he truly believes. Most of my memories from shooting Batman are surprisingly quiet. Me, alone in a green tent, filling out crossword puzzles while someone shouted, "Stay ready! 15 minutes!" And I'd just sit there, waiting, penciling in clues while the whole world expected a superhero. "Hello? Anyone out there?" Nothing. Just the echo. Come on, move, move, move!" Just me, calling into the void. Heath Ledger, my God. What a performance. What a soul. It was a joy just to talk to him, to be near him, to see how completely he threw himself into the Joker. Watching him work, I thought, this is extraordinary. Are we in trouble? Because when Chris and I first sat down, we said, Batman has a problem. The villain is always more interesting. And Batman, he's this close to being a villain himself. He cannot, must not, be boring in comparison. And yet there I was on set thinking, Heath is annihilating this. I'm practically beige next to him. But I was so damn proud of that film. The Dark Knight was something else entirely. And it was genuinely wonderful to talk to him. I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No, you complete me. That was the rhythm we found together. Heath was also a monster on the go-kart track, outracing stuntmen, stealing first place like it was nothing. A wildly talented human being with a beautiful soul. I miss him deeply. The fighter. Dickie was a force of nature. You felt him walk into a room before you even saw him. I spent so much time with him in Lowell, getting kicked out of bars, getting stopped by nearly every cop on the block. I sparred with him too. You think you're a decent boxer until you step into a ring with a professional. Then you realize you're toast. I remember one day he was reading the script. Suddenly he stood up and started marching toward David. Something had clearly hit a nerve. I thought, this is not good. We managed to calm him down, because when you tell someone's story, you have to tell the good and the bad. You can't sanitize it. It was my first film with David, and it taught me so much about the process. I loved playing Dickie, the chaos, the comedy, the cops nearly shutting us down. All of it. The Machinist. You alright? Do I look alright? Brad was stunned when he saw how much weight I'd lost. You actually did it, he said. He didn't think I would. The physical transformation was just the outer shell of a man consumed, eaten alive, by guilt. I had walked away from films that didn't move me, turned down anything I couldn't obsess over. Financially? Terrible idea. I had no money. I was newly married. I was close to losing my home. But business decisions were never my talent. I just needed something that terrified me, something I could completely disappear into. I needed to know if I could push myself that far. All I wanted to know was whether I could actually do it, whether I could play Trevor the way I imagined him, push myself into that frightening, skeletal mental space. It was perfect for me at the time. Honestly, half the time I sat there with headphones on, pretending to listen to something. I wasn't. I needed silence. Pure silence. I was so light, so drained, that every bit of energy went to my brain. I barely slept 2 hours a night. All I wanted to do was read. I tore through Crime and Punishment after talking to Brad, and then page after page of Equus, Justine, everything I could get my hands on. I could sit unmoving for 10 hours straight, reading, like I'd turned into a statue fueled only by obsession. I couldn't do that now. No chance. And then, the financial world. I remember turning to someone and saying, "People are going to pull their money. If the fund drops too far, the swaps are void." Wait, what? All the contracts become void? That moment was wild. I had this incredible day sitting in Michael Burry's dark office, just talking. They'd scheduled all sorts of activities for us, trips, meetings, but we skipped them because we were enjoying the conversation too much. He visited the set later. We kept in touch. An extraordinary man. And what a role. My first time working with Adam McKay, God, I adored it. Like David O. Russell, great directors have their own language. Drummers probably watched me and said, Christian can't play drums. But that didn't matter. It wasn't about being good. It was about Burry hammering his rage into the drum kit. I literally snapped drumsticks, sent them flying across the crew. They had to put up shields. I love interviewing people, obsessively studying them in ways you normally can't. That's part of the fun for me. Vice. Because you're an active leader, you make decisions based on instinct. I do. Everyone says that. Yeah, very different from your father in that regard. Alright, let's go deeper. When Adam asked me to play Dick Cheney, I thought he was insane. Normally prosthetic artists never get months to prepare, but I insisted, we need months. Cheney isn't just a look, it's a weight, a movement, the entire physical vocabulary of a man. Thank God they were patient. We kept refining, shaping, adjusting until one day we looked in the mirror and said, alright, we're finally in the realm. Working with Adam was a blast. He'd sit off camera with a mic and throw out lines, suggest new ways to say things, not improv, exactly, but nudging you into new territory. You had to stay alert, ready to pivot instantly, even though Cheney himself is the last person you'd imagine being alert. He's flat-footed, heavy, calculated, but I loved the immersion. Even if it meant 4 hours in the chair every day. I never actually believed I could play him. That's why it was worth the risk. You have the authority to shoot down any aircraft deemed a threat. The President's authority? Correct, sir. All orders will be unilateral. Unidire, sir? A bit more direction, yes. Mr. Vice President, are we sure these are proper communication protocols? The country is under attack. ROE is flexible. Cheney was brilliant in his own way. A remarkable mind. Whether you agree with his intentions or not, the intelligence is undeniable. He rose fast for a reason. He understood the political machine better than anyone and could manipulate it with surgical precision. He had zero interest in kissing babies or retail politics. He cared about the mechanics of power, and few have ever been better at pulling those levers. I had to step out of school and travel alone for that film, though at the time I didn't understand how unusual the whole experience was. I didn't realize most films don't build a blood-soaked runway in the middle of a swamp in Spain so planes can land on it. They don't build temples from scratch. Or entire hospitals. Or half of a stadium in the middle of nowhere. And I certainly didn't know that not every movie flies you all the way to China, where 10,000 extras move up and down on command like a living tide. Only years later, when I worked on much smaller films, did it finally hit me, oh right, that was a big movie. The beautiful thing is, I didn't feel any pressure. At that age, it never even crossed my mind that a real film might actually come out of what we were making. I was just there in the moment. Animals and children are the best actors. You simply can't compete with them. They don't care about consequences. And in many ways, that's exactly how I acted in Empire of the Sun, not out of intention, not out of technique, but because it never occurred to me to think about anything else. 29? Yes, the superfortress. What we call the hemispheric defense weapon. Where from? Okinawa. The Philippines. Tokyo is within bombing range now. Tokyo? We're going to make them think about going home early. There's a purity in simply playing. Every child knows how to do that. Pretending becomes corrupted only when adults step in with money and expectations. Do more, be better, produce results. That's when things go wrong. I never felt that kind of pressure during filming. Sure, there were emotional moments. Leaving home, leaving my family behind, they couldn't travel with me. I remember standing in an airport, crying my eyes out, saying I didn't want to go. But the moment I arrived on set, God, I fell in love with it. I enjoyed every second. What I didn't enjoy was the publicity. I didn't understand it, why I had to talk about the same thing all day long. It made me feel like I was going mad. People followed me around. Cameras everywhere. And that's when I realized, this part isn't for me. But I still loved the work. So the challenge became, how do I deal with the publicity and not lose the part one actually care about? There's always a price to everything. And once you think it through, you realize it's a small price to pay for storytelling. I'm grateful for all of it. Amsterdam. How can I know this is really you in the photograph? Yes, sir. Well, I'm a doctor. She's a nurse. He's a lawyer. We all met in Belgium, if you remember. That's where our paths crossed first. He was born into experimental medicine, and that brace he wore, he hated it, but he needed it. Terrible injuries to his back and spine. And it showed through the suit, these two metal blocks jutting out. If I could avoid acting the pain, I avoided it. Why pretend to be uncomfortable when you can simply be uncomfortable? Those old braces were primitive, nothing like the medical supports you'd find today. He'd cobbled them together himself, just as he was experimenting with new medicine, trying to find ways to help men who returned from war completely forgotten. These veterans were supposed to come home as heroes, yet no one treated them like heroes. They were left to fend for themselves. That contradiction, that quiet tragedy, was always present in the way he carried himself, in the way he tried to help others even as his own body betrayed him. It was appalling, truly disgraceful. All of them were suffering from PTSD, though no one recognized it at the time. Terrible, brutal injuries, and yet not a single proper painkiller, no anxiety medication, nothing suited to what they were living with. David and I always wanted to create characters we genuinely loved, people we'd enjoy spending time with. Characters who refuse to surrender to life, no matter what life throws at them. People who stay optimistic, utterly unwilling to become cynical. Eyebrows up, that was our little mantra. Where are my eyes, Harold? Right here. You left me in this condition even though you knew damn well I thought she should be hospitalized. It's for her own good. I remember both of them looking a bit stunned on their first day. Neither had worked with David before. We'd shoot the script, sure, but then he'd suddenly toss new lines at people, or simply rewrite dialogue on the spot. No, don't say that, now say this. He'd be lying on the floor beneath the actors, then crawling across the set during a take, then suddenly behind the camera whispering, "Change everything. Do it this way." I absolutely loved it. But occasionally, when he saw someone freeze up like a deer in headlights, he'd come over to me and say, "Can you be the ambassador? Explain to them how we're going to do this." And once they understood, everyone joined in. It became this wonderfully chaotic, deeply satisfying experience. Margot and JD embraced it completely. And then there were moments after shooting when I'd call David. "I know this sounds like stalking, but there's a guy walking down the street. My God, he's perfect. I'm using him for Bernie." David would just laugh. "Great. Fantastic." The mannerisms, the attitudes, they'd been simmering in me for years. By the time we were filming, it was all baked into my bones. Light blue eyes. There are so many good actors out there. Truly, I've been extremely lucky lately to work with some incredibly talented people. But if I had to single out one, Harry Melling. Harry is an absolutely exceptional actor. Any day I got to share a scene with him was a pleasure. Scott Cooper and I. This is our third film together. I love working with Scott. We'd been talking about this idea since 2012, something he'd been shaping piece by piece. He's unbelievably prolific as a writer. He went off to make different things. I went off to make different things. Then, at the right moment, we came back to this, a kind of gothic crime tale, a darkly playful origin story for Edgar Allan Poe, what might have shaped him into the master of the macabre. Why he felt such ease, even joy, in that way of thinking. We wanted to imagine a character who could have inspired all that darkness in him, someone whose existence could echo through Poe's later obsessions. And Scott, again, did a remarkable job bringing it to life.